I stood frozen in front of my walk-in closet, staring at the rows of evening gowns that suddenly felt like costumes for a role I wasn't sure I wanted to play anymore. My hand hovered over the navy silk dress, then moved to the burgundy velvet, then back again. Tonight wasn't just another charity gala at the country club. Tonight, I was walking into battle, and for the first time in my 63 years, I wasn't entirely sure I wanted to win. The dress I finally chose was emerald green, the one Robert had bought me for our 40th anniversary last year. "It brings out your eyes, Maggie," he'd said, using the nickname only he was allowed to use. I wondered if he'd even notice what I was wearing tonight. Lately, he seemed to notice everything except me. I sat at my vanity, the same one my mother had given me when Robert and I bought this house in 1987. My reflection stared back at me, and I barely recognized her. When had the soft lines around my eyes become deep creases? When had my carefully maintained blonde hair faded to this silvery white? I'd stopped coloring it 2 years ago, after our daughter Claire told me I looked distinguished. At the time, I'd felt liberated. Now, I just felt old. My phone buzzed. A text from Robert. "Running late. Diana's car wouldn't start. Giving her a ride to the gala. We'll meet you there. Diana." Of course. I set the phone down carefully, fighting the urge to throw it across the room. Diana Crawford, 55, recently widowed, and apparently incapable of doing anything without my husband's assistance. Her car wouldn't start. Her garden needed weeding. Her computer had a virus. Her son was visiting and she needed restaurant recommendations. On and on and on. "She's just lonely, Maggie," Robert had said when I gently mentioned it last month. "Stan's only been gone a year. We should be neighborly." Neighborly, that's what we were calling it. I finished my makeup, keeping it natural. Diana wore dramatic eye makeup and bold lipstick, the kind I'd stopped wearing years ago because Robert said he preferred my natural beauty. I wondered if he still felt that way. The drive to the country club took 15 minutes. I'd made this drive thousands of times over the past 30 years. Every Sunday for brunch. Every Saturday for golf. Committee meetings, bridge tournaments, holiday parties. This place had been our second home, the backdrop for the life Robert and I had built together after he'd made partner at his law firm and I'd finally been able to stop working. That's when it had happened, I realized, as I pulled into the parking lot. That's when I'd disappeared. I'd been an interior designer, a good one. I'd had my own firm, my own clients, my own identity. But when Robert's career took off and we started moving in different circles, I'd gradually let it go. First, it was just taking fewer clients. Then it was only working with friends. Then it was helping with Robert's office renovation as a favor. And then, one day, I just stopped. We didn't need the money. Claire was in high school and needed me home more. It made sense. Except now Claire was 40, living in Seattle with her own family, and I had nothing but time and a calendar full of charity events I'd volunteered for because that's what the wives did. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and the country club's signature white roses. I spotted Robert immediately. He was laughing, his head thrown back in that genuine way he used to laugh with me, standing close to Diana near the bar. She wore red, a shade that screamed for attention, cut low enough to show off her yoga-toned figure. I'd stopped going to yoga 6 months ago when my knee started acting up. I took a breath and walked toward them. Robert saw me first. "Maggie! You look lovely, sweetheart." He kissed my cheek, the same automatic gesture he'd performed 10,000 times. Diana turned, and I saw something flash across her face before she composed it into a smile. "Margaret," she said, air kissing near my cheeks. "That dress is so elegant, very Grace Kelly." It was a compliment that wasn't a compliment. Grace Kelly, timeless, classic, old. "Thank you, Diana," I said evenly. "Red is certainly bold." Robert cleared his throat. "I need to find Jim Patterson before dinner. He wanted to talk about the golf tournament committee. Ladies, I'll catch up with you in a bit." And just like that, I was alone with her. "Can I get you a drink?" Diana asked, her hand already up to signal the bartender. "They have that organic white wine you like." How did she know what wine I liked? "I'm fine, thank you." "Oh, come on, Margaret, live a little." She laughed, a tinkling sound that made me want to check my teeth for spinach. You know what they say, wine is the answer. What was the question? She was trying to be charming. It would have worked on anyone else. The bartender approached, and Diana ordered 2 glasses of the organic white wine anyway. When he handed them over, she pressed one into my hand with a conspiratorial smile, like we were girlfriends instead of whatever we actually were. "I have to tell you," Diana said, lowering her voice as she leaned in, "I'm so grateful for Robert. This past year has been impossibly hard, and he's been such a rock. You're so lucky to have a man who's so caring." "I am," I said, taking a sip of wine I didn't want. Stan was never like that. Always working, always distracted. Even at the end, it was like he'd already left me, you know? She dabbed at her eye, though I didn't see any tears. "But Robert, he really listens." We had the most amazing conversation the other day about Stan's art collection. Robert said I should sell it and travel, use the money to rediscover myself. Rediscover herself. I'd mentioned wanting to travel 3 months ago, and Robert had said we couldn't afford it with his new boat purchase. "That sounds like good advice," I managed. "He's full of good advice." Just yesterday, he was telling me about this documentary on Netflix about aging and vitality. Have you seen it? It's all about how we don't have to let ourselves go just because we're getting older. We can still be vibrant and attractive and relevant. There it was, the knife, slipped in so smoothly I almost didn't feel it. "I haven't seen it," I said. "Oh, you should. It's really inspiring. There's this woman in it who's 75 and she runs marathons. Can you imagine? 75! Diana sipped her wine, her eyes tracking Robert across the room. It made me realize that widowhood could be a new beginning instead of an ending. A chance to become the person I always wanted to be, instead of just someone's wife. The irony of her words would have been funny if they didn't hurt so much. Here she was, telling me about not being just someone's wife, while actively trying to become my husband's next wife. "Excuse me," I said. "I need to use the ladies' room." I didn't actually need the ladies' room. I needed to breathe. I locked myself in a stall and pressed my palms against the cool marble walls, trying to steady myself. This was ridiculous. I was 63 years old, married for 40 years, with a life and a history and a mortgage paid off, and grandchildren who loved me. I was not going to fall apart because some woman in a red dress made a few pointed comments. But when I looked at myself in the mirror, I saw what Diana saw. What maybe Robert saw. A woman who'd let herself fade into the background. A woman whose last vibrant moment had probably been when she'd chosen the bold pink throw pillows for the den 5 years ago. I reapplied my lipstick with a steady hand and walked back out. Dinner was the usual affair. Chicken or salmon, your choice. I sat between Robert and Margaret Henderson, who spent 20 minutes describing her daughter's wedding in excruciating detail. Robert spent the entire meal leaning across me to talk to Diana, who was seated on his other side. "Have you been to that new Italian place on Riverside?" Diana asked him. "Not yet. Maggie and I keep meaning to try it, but we always end up at our usual spots." "Oh, you have to go. The risotto is incredible. Maybe we could all go together sometime?" "That sounds great," Robert said, cutting his chicken without looking at me. "What do you think, Maggie?" "Sure," I said, knowing it would never happen. Diana didn't want me there. After dinner came the speeches and the auction. I'd donated a watercolor I'd painted years ago, back when I still did that sort of thing. It sold for $300 to someone I didn't know. The other items went for more weekend getaways, jewelry, a vintage wine collection. Diana bid aggressively on a spa package, ultimately winning it for $2,000. "I need some pampering," she announced to our table, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Self-care isn't selfish, right, Margaret?" "Right," I echoed. Then came the dancing. Robert stood, offering me his hand. "Shall we, Mrs. Whitmore?" It was the first time all evening he'd really looked at me. We walked to the dance floor, and he pulled me close, his hand warm on my back. For a moment, it felt like old times, like we were 30 again, dancing at someone's wedding, whispering about how we'd do our own wedding differently. Like we were 40, dancing at the club's Valentine's Day party, him telling me I was the most beautiful woman in the room. Like we were 50, dancing at Claire's wedding, both of us crying and trying to hide it. "You're quiet tonight," Robert said. "Just tired. The gala will be over soon. Then we can go home, put our feet up." He smiled at me, that familiar smile that had carried us through 4 decades. Maybe watch that British mystery show you like? It was a peace offering, an acknowledgement that he knew I existed, and I wanted to take it. I wanted to smile back and say yes and go home and pretend everything was fine. But then I saw Diana watching us from the edge of the dance floor, and something in her expression made my blood run cold. It wasn't jealousy, it was pity. She pitied me. The song ended. Robert kissed my forehead. "I need to talk to Bill about the board meeting. Be right back." I watched him go, watched him stop to chat with 3 different people on his way across the room, watched him laugh and shake hands and be the Robert everyone loved, the successful lawyer, the devoted volunteer, the pillar of the community. I made my way to the bar for a glass of water, my heels pinching my feet. I'd bought these shoes specifically for this dress, spending more than I usually would because the salesperson said they were age-appropriate but still sexy. Now they just hurt. "Margaret." I turned. Diana had appeared beside me like a shark sensing blood in the water. "I've been wanting to talk to you," she said, her voice low. Privately. Every instinct told me to walk away. Instead, I said, "About what?" She glanced around, then gestured toward the terrace. Outside? The summer air was thick and warm, cicadas singing in the darkness beyond the lights. Diana leaned against the stone railing, backlit by the glow from the ballroom, and I realized this was choreographed. She'd planned this moment, down to the lighting. "I'm just going to be direct," Diana said. "I think you know that Robert and I have become very close." My heart hammered against my ribs. "He's been helping you adjust after Stan's death. That's what friends do." "It's more than that, Margaret. And I think you know it." She turned to face me fully. "I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm really not. But I think we need to be honest about what's happening here." "What's happening here?" I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "is that my husband is being kind to a widow who recently moved into our neighborhood." "Margaret." She said my name like I was a child who needed something explained. "Robert is unhappy. He's been unhappy for a long time," he told me. The words hit me like a slap. "He told you." "We talk, really talk. About everything. His dreams, his fears, his regrets." She paused. "He told me he feels invisible in his own home. That you're so caught up in your committees and your routines that you don't even see him anymore." I couldn't breathe. The air was too thick, the night too dark. "He said," Diana continued, then stopped, as if reconsidering. But we both knew she wouldn't stop. "He said he loves you, but he's not sure he's in love with you anymore. That you're more like roommates than partners." Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "Not here. Not in front of her." "Does he know you're telling me this?" "No. But someone needed to." "Margaret, you're a lovely woman. You deserve to know the truth instead of living in denial." She reached out as if to touch my arm, and I stepped back. "I'm not the enemy here. I'm not trying to steal anything from you. The truth is, you gave him away yourself. Little by little, year by year, until there was nothing left for him to hold on to." "How dare you?" "I dare because I care about both of you. And because I know what it's like to waste years in a marriage that's already over. Stan and I should have divorced years before he got sick. We stayed together out of obligation and fear and habit. Is that what you want? Another 20 years of going through the motions?" My hands were shaking. I clenched them into fists at my sides. "What do you want from me, Diana?" She looked at me with something that might have been genuine sympathy if I didn't know better. "I want you to give me your husband." The words hung in the air between us, stunning in their audacity. The cicadas seemed to fall silent. Even the music from inside faded to a distant murmur. "Excuse me? Not give him away like property. I'm not a monster." Diana's voice was almost gentle now. "But let him go. Stop holding on to something that's already gone. He deserves a chance at happiness in whatever years he has left. So do you, actually. But you're never going to find it as long as you're clinging to a marriage that died years ago." I stared at her. At this woman in her red dress with her yoga body and her widow's grief and her absolute certainty that she knew what was best for everyone. At this woman who'd spent months circling my husband like a vulture, all while pretending to be grateful for his friendship, and something inside me that had been bending finally snapped. "Let me tell you something about happiness, Diana." My voice came out low and dangerous, nothing like my usual careful tones. You think you know my husband because he helped you fix your car and listened to you cry about Stan? You think a few months of crisis bonding means you understand 40 years of marriage? Margaret, I'm not finished. The words poured out of me, hot and sharp. You want to talk about invisibility? About being taken for granted? I was invisible long before you showed up. I was invisible when I gave up my career so Robert could focus on making partner. I was invisible when I moved 5 times for his job, leaving friends and clients and everything I'd built. I was invisible when I stopped dyeing my hair and wearing heels and trying to be the kind of woman who turns heads because I truly thought, that after 40 years, we were past all that what we had was deeper than attraction and excitement and whatever the hell you think you're offering him. Diana's expression had shifted from sympathy to uncertainty. But you know what? I continued, my voice rising. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was a fool to think that devotion and history and partnership meant more than a red dress and flattery and the fantasy of being young again. Maybe I was stupid to believe that the man I've loved for 40 years, the man I nursed through a heart attack 3 years ago, the man whose mother I cared for until she died, the man whose daughter I raised while he worked 80-hour weeks, the man whose dreams I supported, even when they scared me. Maybe I was stupid to believe that man would have enough integrity not to discuss his marriage with a woman who clearly wants to replace me. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed, a harsh sound that didn't sound like me at all. You want to talk about fair? You came to my home for dinner 6 weeks ago. You sat at my table, ate my food, complimented my decorating, and the whole time you were planning this, you were calculating how to take my place. And you have the audacity to tell me I gave him away? I stepped closer to her, close enough to see her expensive mascara, close enough to smell her perfume. So here's my answer to your request, Diana. No. You cannot have my husband. Not because he's property, not because I'm clinging to something dead, but because he's not yours to take. If Robert wants to leave me, if he truly is unhappy, if what we built together means nothing anymore, he can tell me that himself, like an adult, like the man I married. But he doesn't need you to speak for him. And I certainly don't need you to tell me what I deserve. Diana's face had gone pale. I was only trying to... You were trying to make yourself feel better about wanting someone else's husband. You dressed it up as concern and honesty and tough love, but really, you just wanted permission. Well, you don't have it. And you know what else you don't have? You don't have 40 years of knowing every one of Robert's morning routines. You don't have the memory of holding his hand while our daughter was born. You don't have the scar on your thumb from when you cut yourself making him soup when he was sick, or the inside jokes from 1,000 dinners, or the shorthand that comes from building a life together one day at a time. I was crying now, I realized. Hot tears running down my carefully made-up face, probably ruining my mascara. But I didn't care anymore. So take your red dress and your advice about Netflix documentaries and your pity, and stay away from my husband, stay away from my marriage, and if it falls apart anyway? I swallowed hard. Then at least it will be our failure, not yours. I turned and walked back inside, my legs shaking so hard I wasn't sure they'd carry me. The ballroom was still full of people laughing and dancing, oblivious to the war that had just been fought on the terrace. I grabbed my clutch from our table and headed for the exit. Robert caught up with me in the parking lot. Maggie, where are you going? I was looking for you. I kept walking toward my car, fishing for my keys. Maggie, he grabbed my arm gently, turning me to face him. What's wrong? Why are you crying? I looked up at him. At the man I'd loved since I was 23 years old. At the face I knew better than my own. At the person who'd been my partner through everything, children and mortgages and aging parents and career changes and all the beautiful, terrible, ordinary moments that made up a life. Are you unhappy, Robert? He blinked, confused. What? In our marriage. Are you unhappy? What brought this on? Diana told me you've been talking to her. About us. About how you feel invisible and how we're more like roommates. My voice cracked. Is that true? His face went through a series of emotions, surprise, guilt, anger, fear. She told you that? She told me a lot of things, including that I should give you to her. She said what? His voice was sharp now, loud enough that a couple walking to their car looked over. She asked me to let you go. to give you permission to be happy with her. I was crying harder now, and maybe she's right, Robert. Maybe I did disappear. Maybe I have been so caught up in routines and committees and being the person I thought you wanted that I forgot to actually be a person. Maybe... Stop. He pulled me close, wrapping his arms around me tightly. Just stop. We stood there in the parking lot, holding each other while I cried into his shoulder. Around us, people were leaving the gala, some glancing at us curiously before hurrying to their cars. I didn't care. Let them look. Let them gossip. Let them think whatever they wanted. I need to tell you something, Robert said finally, his voice rough, and I need you to really hear me. I pulled back just enough to see his face. I have been unhappy, he admitted. Not with you. With myself. I retired 6 months ago, and I don't know who I am anymore. For 40 years, I was Robert Whitmore, attorney at law. Now, I'm just a guy who plays golf and attends charity events. I've been lost, Maggie, completely lost. Why didn't you tell me? Because you seemed happy. You had your committees and your friends and your projects. I didn't want to burden you with my identity crisis. He touched my face, wiping away tears. And Diana, yes, I talked to her. She listened. She asked questions. It felt good to be seen again, to feel like my thoughts mattered. But that's all it was, Maggie. I swear to you. We never... She wants more. I know. I'm not blind. He looked devastated. I thought I was being helpful, a good neighbor, and maybe part of me liked the attention, the feeling of being needed. But wanting attention and wanting to leave my wife are two very different things. She said we were living in denial, that our marriage was already over. Then she doesn't know us at all. He cupped my face in both hands. Maggie, I love you. Not out of obligation or habit or history, though God knows we have plenty of all three. I love you because you're the only person in the world who knows all of me, the good, the bad, the scared, the brave, and you've loved me anyway. How could that ever be over? I don't paint anymore, I said, the words tumbling out. I don't work. I don't have anything that's just mine. I look in the mirror and I don't recognize myself. Everything about me is Robert's wife or Claire's mother or committee member or good neighbor. When did I stop being Margaret? I don't know. Sweetheart, when did I stop being the man who used to leave love notes in your briefcase? When did we stop taking those weekend trips to nowhere? When did we become so caught up in maintaining our life that we forgot to actually live it? We looked at each other in the dim parking lot light, and I saw the truth reflected in his eyes. We'd both been sleepwalking. Both been going through motions, both been too scared or too proud or too distracted to admit that something essential had been lost. What do we do? I whispered. I don't know, but I know what we don't do. We don't let someone else define our marriage. We don't give up without fighting, and we sure as hell don't take advice from Diana Crawford. Despite everything, I laughed. Come home with me, Robert said. We'll skip the rest of this thing. Let's go home and actually talk. Really talk, like we used to, all night if we need to. Okay. He kept his arm around me as we walked to his car. Behind us, the country club glittered like it always did, perfect and polished, and completely unaware that someone's world had just shifted on its axis. We didn't go straight home. Robert drove us to the lake, the one where he'd proposed 40 years ago. We sat on a bench near the water, my head on his shoulder, watching the moonlight dance across the surface. I want to paint again, I said into the silence. Then paint. I want to travel. Really travel. Not just go to the same beach house we've been going to for 20 years. Where do you want to go? Italy. Greece. I want to see art and architecture and eat food I can't pronounce. Let's book tickets tomorrow. Robert, I'm serious. Let's sell the damn boat. I never even use it. Let's take the money and go to Italy. I lifted my head to look at him. You love that boat. I love the idea of that boat. The reality is it sits in the marina costing me money while I feel guilty for not using it. He smiled ruefully. I bought it because I thought that's what retired successful men do. But you know what I actually want to do? I want to go to Italy with my wife and hold her hand while we get lost in some tiny village where nobody knows who we were or who we're supposed to be. We need help, I said. Professional help. We can't just go to Italy and hope everything fixes itself. I know. I'll call someone tomorrow. We'll find a therapist. Whatever it takes. And Diana? His jaw tightened. I'll handle Diana. She overstepped, way overstepped. Whatever friendship I thought we had ends now. We sat there until past midnight, talking about everything and nothing. About Claire and the grandkids and the leak in the guest bathroom and whether we should finally replace the kitchen cabinets. About deeper things, too regrets and hopes and fears we'd been too busy to voice. About who we'd been and who we'd become and who we wanted to be. It wasn't a fix. It wasn't a resolution. But it was a start. 3 months later, I was standing in front of an easel in what used to be our formal dining room, now converted into my studio. Afternoon light streamed through the windows, illuminating the canvas where colors I'd forgotten I loved merged into a landscape that existed only in my imagination. Robert poked his head in. "How's it going?" "Good. Really good, actually." I stepped back to evaluate my work. "I'm thinking this one might be ready for the gallery next month." "That's great, honey." He came to stand beside me, studying the painting. "It's beautiful. You're really talented, you know that?" I did know. I was remembering. "How was your session?" I asked. "Good. Hard, but good." He'd started seeing his own therapist in addition to our couples counseling. We talked about retirement and identity and learning to measure success differently. And I'm thinking about volunteering at that legal aid clinic downtown. Real work, not just committees. Helping people who actually need it. "You'd be wonderful at that." He kissed the top of my head, paint splattered and messy as it was. "We leave for Rome in 2 weeks. Are you excited?" Terrified. Excited. Both. We'd planned 3 weeks in Italy, just the two of us. No set itinerary, no rush. Just time to be together, to remember who we were before we became who everyone expected us to be. Diana had moved 6 weeks ago. According to neighborhood gossip, she'd met someone at her grief support group and relocated to be closer to him. Robert had been cordial but distant in the weeks before she left, making it clear that their friendship was over. She'd tried to apologize to me once, catching me at the grocery store, but I'd simply nodded and walked away. Some bridges, once burned, weren't worth rebuilding. The country club gala was last night. We'd decided not to go. Instead, we'd made dinner together, pasta from scratch, Robert's specialty, and danced in the kitchen to the same song we'd danced to at our wedding. We'd laughed about his terrible singing and my worst dancing, and then we'd sat on the back porch watching fireflies until the mosquitoes drove us inside. It was ordinary, perfectly ordinary, and it was ours. "I'm proud of us," I said, wiping my paintbrush on an old rag. Yeah. We could have given up. A lot of people would have. "A lot of people didn't build what we built," Robert said. "They don't have what we have." He was right. What Diana had seen that night on the terrace was the wear and tear, the cracks in the foundation, the places where we'd gotten lazy about maintenance. What she didn't see, what she couldn't see, was how deep the foundation went, how strong it was beneath the surface damage. My phone buzzed. A text from Claire. "Mom, I love the painting you sent. Can you make me one for the living room? I'll pay." I showed Robert, smiling. "Our daughter wants to pay me for my art." "As she should. You're a professional." "I'm a 63-year-old woman who took a 40-year break from painting. You're an artist who had other priorities for a while. There's a difference." He headed toward the door, then paused. "I'm making dinner tonight. No protests. You keep painting. I'll call you when it's ready." After he left, I stood there in my studio, and looked at the work surrounding me. 10 canvases in various stages of completion. Colors and shapes and landscapes and abstract emotions made visual. Pieces of myself I'd thought were lost, now found again. I picked up my brush and returned to the canvas. Outside, I could hear Robert in the kitchen, humming off-key. The afternoon sun warmed my skin. My hands, wrinkled and age-spotted as they were, still knew how to create beauty. Diana had asked me to give her my husband. What she didn't understand was that he'd never been mine to give. He'd been his own person, making his own choices, just as I was my own person. What we'd built together wasn't ownership. It was partnership. And partnerships required work and communication and the willingness to fight through the hard times instead of running away when things got difficult. She'd thought she was offering him freedom. What she'd actually been offering was escape. And there's a difference. Freedom means being fully yourself within a relationship. Escape means running from one incomplete version of yourself into another. I added a streak of cerulean blue to my painting, then stepped back. Better. Getting closer to what I saw in my mind. My phone rang. It was Margaret Henderson from the country club. Hello? Margaret! I heard you weren't at the gala last night. Is everything all right? Everything's fine, Margaret. Robert and I just decided to stay in. Oh. Well, I wanted to tell you. We're forming a new committee for the fall fundraiser, and we'd love to have you. You have such wonderful ideas. I looked at my painting, at the studio I'd created, at the life I was reclaiming piece by piece. Thank you for thinking of me, but I'm going to have to pass. I'm actually pretty busy with my art right now. There was a pause. Your art? Yes, I'm painting again. In fact, I have a show scheduled at the Riverside Gallery next month. You should come. Yes, I'd love to. I didn't know you painted. A lot of people didn't know I painted, including, for a long time, myself. After I hung up, I caught my reflection in the window glass. Silver hair pulled back in a messy bun. No makeup, paint on my shirt, smile lines around my eyes and mouth. I looked exactly like what I was, a woman who'd survived her own life and come out the other side still standing. Robert called from the kitchen. Dinner's ready. I cleaned my brushes, covered my palette, and walked toward the sound of his voice. Toward our kitchen, our table, our ordinary evening together. Toward the life we'd chosen, fought for, and refused to let anyone else define for us. What are we having? I asked, entering the kitchen. Salmon and that quinoa salad you like, and I made something special for dessert. Yeah? He grinned at me, looking more like the man I'd married than he had in years. Tiramisu. From that recipe you've been talking about trying. I found it in your magazine. I wrapped my arms around him from behind, resting my cheek against his back. I love you. I love you too, Maggie. Always have, always will. And standing there in our kitchen, dinner on the stove and a whole life stretched out behind and ahead of us, I believed him. Not because everything was perfect. Not because we'd solved all our problems or because the last few months hadn't been hard, but because we'd chosen to do the work. Together. Diana had asked me to give her my husband. What she'd actually given me was a wake-up call, a reminder that marriages don't survive on autopilot, that love isn't something you feel once and then coast on forever. It's something you choose, every day, especially on the days when it's hard. And I was choosing it. We both were. That was worth more than a red dress and flattery and the fantasy of starting over. That was worth fighting for.